So the Women in Business Club, in collaboration with the Healthcare Club, are absolutely thrilled tonight to welcome Luisa Alemany and our special guest, Dr. Aradhana Sarin. So thank you very much for joining us. I'm sure some of you have interacted with Professor Luisa in the past, but if you haven't, she is an absolute force of nature and is definitely coming to make her mark on LBS and ensure that we are an entrepreneurial powerhouse. Just a little bit of housekeeping. So if you wouldn't mind putting your phones on silent for the duration of the fireside chat. And then subsequently, we have organized food in the dining hall. The Healthcare Club has kindly invested a little bit more money and got some sushi, which I've heard is very popular. So we'll have people that will help to direct you at the end of it. I think Odysseus now wants to say a few words before we hand over to the special guests.
Perfect. Thanks so much, Yvonne. Thank you, everyone, for joining. I just want to take a second to introduce Dr. Sarin because I think we're extremely honored, first of all, that she's here. And we are in a very, very great position to be able to have such great speakers. And I want to thank again Professor Luisa for helping us organize this event. So Dr. Sarin, as hopefully you'll know, and you can see, is the Chief Financial Officer of Astra Zeneca, and truly, I think, and the most important part, a leader who shows and epitomizes interdisciplinary excellence and truly visionary leadership in healthcare. Her career is nothing short of extraordinary. She is a medical doctor with a medical degree from the University of Delhi and went on to practice medicine in both India and Africa. And as many of us, and that resonates personally with me a lot, that have medical degrees and have more of an interest in business, more of an intellectual curiosity and a passion for more systematic change, she then went on to pivot from clinical practice to finance and strategy, ending her MBA from the Stanford Business School. We'll forgive you for that, that's okay. And then pretty much launching a stellar career in investment banking. So over 2 decades in the finance field with senior leadership positions in JP Morgan, UBS, Citibank, and advising pretty much biopharma and life sciences companies in capital markets, strategy, corporate growth, etc. And then another kind of step and change in the career, even more transitioning to corporate leadership roles, and joined Alexion Pharmaceuticals, where she served as Chief Business and Strategy Officer before becoming CFO of that company. Obviously today, CFO of Astra Zeneca, and Dr. Sarin is truly at the forefront of shaping company strategy, driving sustainable growth, and ensuring that Astra Zeneca continues to deliver the life-changing medication and that patients need worldwide. But other than a very impressive resume, which I think we can all agree on, I think the most important part is that Dr. Sarin's story shows a very impressive example of kind of bold transitions, brave learning experiences, and actually bold leadership. And that makes her for a great speaker that we're on to have here today. So whether you're an entrepreneur, a healthcare leader, a finance professional, anyone really in this room, I think there is something very important that we can learn from Dr. Sarin and in the intersection of medicine and finance and corporate strategy. So I would ask you to please join me in giving a very warm welcome for our speaker, Dr. Sarin, and Professor Alemany.
Hello, good evening, everyone. And thank you for that extensive introduction that makes my work much easier. By the way, you also have to forgive me because I also did my MBA in Stanford. Nobody's perfect.
We were in the same class. That's why I'm here.
And sometimes even sitting together. Okay, so I'm going to start from the very, 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 very beginning because I want maybe to share or to, get a little bit more insights about you when you were a girl, when you were a little girl and you were in Tanzania, because Aradhana, her family is from India, but her parents were at the time in Tanzania, and therefore she was born and raised there, and she studied there for many years until she moved to the US. And so tell us a little bit about what do you remember from you being a girl in Africa and growing there, and what were the things that made you, decide to study medicine?
Okay. Well, hello everyone. Nice to be here. So as Luisa mentioned, I was born and brought up in Tanzania in Dar es Salaam. My parents lived in Africa for almost 35 years, mostly in Tanzania and Zambia. And actually, Luisa visited Zambia with me when between first and second year of business school. So that was very nice. That was very nice of her. Um, I uh, I grew up in a very modest household. I actually left home when I was 13 years old because there weren't good schools in Tanzania. So my parents sent me to India. I lived for 2 years with my grandparents between age 13 and 15. And then I was basically on my own. I remember the time in Africa very fondly. It's a very poor country. It was, a very poor country then. I remember that, part of my motivation for becoming a physician was to try to help people and help suffering and so forth. That was part of my motivation when I was growing up. I actually came back to Tanzania after I finished my medical school and internship and worked in Tanzania for about a year and a half as a physician. This was in the 1990s when the HIV epidemic was in full swing in East Africa and most of Africa. 9 out of 10 beds in the hospital that I worked in were HIV patients. And you could truly see the power that medicine could have at that time. So that was a big motivating force for me to try to do something broader than just practicing medicine. Yeah.
So then one day you started thinking, okay, I can do more, I need to do more. And then you thought about business school, or that was not a direct thought, and then you started talking to people, somebody suggested. How you came to the idea of doing an MBA? I mean, it's so weird, right? You're a doctor, you're in Tanzania, in an hospital that is at full capacity, and you apply to business school? Okay, something in the middle maybe?
Yeah, something was there. So the truth is, I was completely clueless. I had no idea what business was. I had actually not done math for almost 10 years because between pre-med and medical school and practicing, I'd lost touch with math. I was at that time thinking, okay, what can I do that's broader? Because as a practicing physician, you can maybe see 10 patients in a day. You can maybe impact 10 patients or their families in a day. And seeing what medicine could do, I was thinking, well, I could do a lot more than just see patients. So that was one reason. The second reason was I actually liked studying medicine a lot more than practicing it, because I felt like I was learning something new. I'm always driven by learning and curiosity. And once you start practicing, you sort of see the same type of patients most of the time, and it kind of becomes routine and boring. So that was the second motivation. So I was thinking of either like a master's in public health or some program like that, or a PhD, or an MBA. My brother actually was at Columbia Business School at the time, and he suggested that I should apply for business school. So I did. So I applied to 5 or 6 business schools, and I got admission. And I told him, I was like, well, I want to go to Columbia because that's where you are. And I didn't know anybody in the United States. And he said, you're stupid. If you got admission in Stanford, you should go to Stanford. Don't go to Columbia. So I ended up at Stanford. First year of business school, again, I was completely clueless. and you know all the courses, right? Macroeconomics, microeconomics, statistics, finance, all this stuff, which I had no clue about, but I loved learning, and I think I did pretty well. Um, so that was really how I ended up in business school.
And we were sitting together in several classes. That I remember. I don't know because probably we could choose the places. I don't think it was by random chance. And what did you do over the summer? What were your summer internship? Did you went already to investment banking? What did you do?
Yeah, so I was looking for in the first year I ended up, I liked finance a lot. I wanted to get an internship in some finance related field. So I thought, okay, investment banking is a good idea. Nobody wanted to give me an internship in investment banking. I had many, many interviews. Nobody wanted to give me a job. A lot of people wanted to give me a job in equity research, which is the other side of the house, but not in transactions or in advisory. Finally, I did get one opportunity, one internship, which I did very well in, and I got multiple offers, for my final year. But that's what I did in between first and second year. I did not go on any class trips, unlike Luisa, because I had no money. So my objective was also to earn some money over the summer period. I also did a lot of. I also worked as a teaching assistant, actually, both in finance and marketing, to earn some money. Yeah, so that's what I did.
I got 2 jobs in the summer. One of them, Goldman Sachs, and the second one it was with Cisco Systems to prepare some valuation models. So it was like, imagine the summer super pack. And then after Goldman Sachs, I couldn't take it any longer, and I called Cisco and I said, sorry, I'm not going. And then is when we went to Zambia together. So actually it was, it was a very tough summer, but yeah, very interesting as well. And then you finish and you go, and by the way, we graduate in 2000, and you might recall what was happening at that time. Very nice graduation party, but then you went to banking as the markets were starting to collapse. Actually, they started collapsing in April, but okay, by graduation, not everybody knew that the markets were collapsing, but you were in banking. So you joined Citi at the beginning?
No, I actually joined JP Morgan at the time. And you're right, the markets were collapsing. This was 2000. And JP Morgan, I think just a few months back, had just acquired or merged with Chase, which now obviously made them into a massive powerhouse out, and they bought Bear Stearns and everything else after that. So, so I remember when I joined, there were 50 people in our first year associate class. And because of the merger and because of the markets crash, an year later, there were 2 people left, me and one other person. So it was quite brutal, actually, that time in the financial markets.
And so you stay in banking. So then from JP Morgan, you went to UBS, right? And you stayed there for many, many years. You became MD, you were leading the healthcare practice or investment banking. Tell us a little bit, what were you doing in banking for many years? I mean, over a decade.
Too long. My husband reminds me every time, you stayed in banking too long. But I stayed in banking almost 2 decades, so between JP Morgan and then UBS and then Citi. Citi also I joined like after the financial crisis, the most recent one. So I joined Citi when their stock was, I think, under $1. And it was sort of a turnaround. But yeah, I ended up probably staying in banking too long. That's what I get reminded every time.
Yeah, when you are in banking, you don't have time to think about leaving it. Although every day you say, why am I doing this to me? Okay, and then you jump from banking to a biotech or healthcare company. And how was that transition? So did you decide it, or you were working, they were your client and they told you you want to join? So what happened? Tell us the secret story.
So that's what happened. So Alexion Pharmaceuticals was about $25 billion market cap, smaller pharma company or biotech company, you could say. They had run into a number of issues with some sales practices and DOJ investigation and other issues, and the board basically replaced the entire management team. So a new CEO comes in. The CEO was somebody I'd worked with in banking, actually had done a lot of work with him over many, many years, and he asked me to come join the company to help turn it around and build the strategy and build the pipeline and so forth. So that's the only reason I moved.
And how was the change? Because, I mean, investment banking is, well, I don't know how much you know, but there is very specific life in investment banking. And then suddenly, after 2 decades, you are in a normal, not normal, but in a company. So life is very different, how was the change?
So it was quite an adjustment for me, but I think it was also an adjustment for the rest of the organization. So when I joined, the first couple of weeks, everybody invited me to a lot of meetings. And in companies, I figured they have a lot of meetings. In investment banking, time is money, right? Because you're in a client service business. Wherever you spend your time, you better be making money. Otherwise, you're not really doing your job. So after about 2 or 3 weeks, I was really frustrated. I was like, what's going on? Because we'd have all these meetings, and there wouldn't be like a firm conclusion or a firm output or so I was maybe driving the organization. So I put an end to that, but I was driving maybe the organization hard in terms of change. So I think they adjusted to me and I adjusted to them. So I think we adjusted.
And then this company, Alexion, was bought by Astra Zeneca. I don't know if you are aware of this. So she was in a company, then a big fish come and acquire the smaller, well, I don't know the sizes of
fish.
Yeah, but I don't know how big was one compared to the other. And then, even before the merger is even concluded, you become the CFO of AstraZeneca. So what happened there?
So September of 2000, AstraZeneca approached Alexion. Alexion was, let's say, about a $30 billion market cap. AstraZeneca at that time was about a $110 billion market cap company. They approached Alexion. I basically ran the transaction on the Alexion side. At that time, Alexion Pharmaceutical also had an activist shareholder, Elliott Management, actually based here, that was, had been agitating for several months. And so I wanted to keep the transaction or the discussions really confidential. So in the entire company, maybe 10 people, including myself and the CEO and the general counsel, knew about it. So that took a few months, and the transaction got announced in December of 2000. So all of this happened during COVID. I never met anybody in person from AstraZeneca. And then there's a time lag between signing and closing, which was about 6 months. So I was helping plan the transition and so forth. And AstraZeneca asked if I would stay and be the group CFO. And I felt a little moral obligation since I had negotiated the deal, and so I ended up staying.
Fantastic. So that's kind of weird. Normally, when you are acquired, they invite you to leave. But in this case, they not only invite you to stay, but they give you basically the top role. Because I was asking you the other day, what you do in AstraZeneca or what are you taking care? And you told me everything. Okay, I don't go to the labs to do R&D, but the rest is under my control, right?
Yeah, I mean, as a CFO, you have oversight over everything, right? You have oversight over operations, over financial performance, over what projects get funded or don't get funded from your R&D standpoint, what capital investments and manufacturing investments you make or don't make, driving returns on those investments. So you have a, sort of bird's eye view of everything that's moving in the organization without obviously micromanaging everything. So it is, and you need to, both from a delivering for shareholders as well as from a risk management standpoint, you need to know, when Russia sanctions happen or whatever happens, you need to manage risk as well as deliver performance.
And what do you enjoy the most of your job? I'm not going to tell you what you don't like. I can tell you already what I don't like of my job is grading exams or grading work. So that I don't like. But I'm not going to ask you that, but what do you enjoy the most of all the things, different things that you do?
Talking to you guys.
Okay, apart from that.
No, I think everything is good. Ultimately, it's bringing your judgment and hoping that you help make better decisions for the organization. My objective, I mean, I'm not going to be I'm not going to be on this stage forever in this company forever. So the objective is hopefully when I leave, the company is stronger and better and, has delivered better than where I found it. So that's my only objective.
Beautiful. And you are very involved with the Astra Zeneca network of women.
Yes.
Tell us a little bit about it. It was something that was already there and you joined, or did you invented it?
So, so AstraZeneca is, is a big organization. Now it's almost close to 100,000 people. But it's also very decentralized. So AstraZeneca in a country like AstraZeneca Poland or UK or whatever, they'd often run almost independently. Obviously report to the group and consolidate into the group. So there were women groups, but they were informal and they were not really a network per se. And women groups like here would, sort of do activities. So what I helped after I joined was bring all the entire global network together, formalize it, put some resources behind it, and really help women, both from in terms of tools that they could have to succeed and be most effective, but also bringing the network, because a lot of times people in organizations, especially big organizations, they don't even know what other opportunities there may be. When you don't have knowledge, and people can be in a company like AstraZeneca for 20, 30 years and have 6 different jobs, and every job is like almost starting a new career in a new area. But if you don't have knowledge of it, or if you don't have knowledge of all the different opportunities, then it's very hard. So just bringing that knowledge and opportunities for women.
Okay, I'm going to ask you one more questions and then I'm going to open up because I want to give time everyone here to ask you questions. It's about the boards, because I don't know how you do it, because I think about your job and I imagine you don't have any free time. So thank you for being here with us today. But then you also are in at least two that I know, boards. One of them is a nonprofit, so the American Red Cross. And then the other one is the largest beer company in the world, which I don't think you drink beer. So
I don't.
I didn't get it. I was like, am I looking at this right? Like, no, it cannot be. So tell me a little bit first. Well, the American Red Cross, I understand better because of your background, but still, you commit because you are giving them your time. So do you really have time, and what is your involvement? And yeah.
Yeah, so so I'm on the AstraZeneca board, which is more a UK thing, as a executive director. And the American Red Cross I joined, they approached me, and they have a very important mission, which I'm sure you have the Red Cross here. But in the US, it's a very important mission because with all the natural disasters, like the stuff in LA, they set up shelters within 24 hours. They're just, it's a very purpose-driven organization. I also knew of the Red Cross because when I'd worked with some clients in the US, the Red Cross manages almost 60-70% of the blood supply. So the blood collections, the blood supply to hospitals, all of which is done obviously on a nonprofit basis. So it's just a good organization. And the chairwoman who approached me is a very nice woman. I'm very fond of her. She's an incredible woman. If you want to look her up, her name is Bonnie. She used to be actually the ambassador of the U.S. to Finland, and very successful business entrepreneur and so forth. So, she's also one of those women, like if she asks you something, you can't really say no. So that was the Red Cross story. And then the Anheuser-Busch InBev, which is the world's largest brewery. So I had the opportunity to join other boards, healthcare, non-healthcare, etc. But when they approached me, again, my first response to them was, "Are you sure you want me on your board? Because I'm not really your customer, because I don't drink." But they wanted somebody who's obviously in finance, but also somebody who's contemporary because, consumer tastes are changing. You've probably seen, the rise of non-alcoholic beverages, and they're, they sponsored the Olympics this year, and a lot of it is driven by the trend to non-alc and lighter beer and so on and so forth. So it's been great learning about a whole different sector, which, on some levels, it's, global companies are similar. A lot of the challenges that AstraZeneca as a global company has is similar to a challenge that ABI would have as a global company, but some things are also very specific and very different. So you get to hopefully both contribute as well as learn. And it's been great learning. I think after 2 months after I joined the ABI board, there was the whole Bud Light situation. So that was a whole crisis management. But whether it's activist shareholders or crisis, you learn through every crisis, and so it's been a good learning.
Okay, they send you some beers for Christmas. Please send them to my house. And if you ever get tired, I'm happy to take the board and learn a lot from these situations. Okay, I'm going to open up for questions. So if you have a question, I think we have mics on the back. So we have a question already here. And maybe you can introduce yourself a little and, and ask the question.
Great. Thank you, Ms. Aradhana, and thank you, Professor Luisa. My name is Ashim. I'm an MB25, and my question would be about your experience as an MBA student yourself after having achieved so much over these decades after the MBA and pivoting and being in this position that you are the CFO of a big company. In retrospect, what would you advise to these students here or broadly the community of MBA students who are trying to do the same for themselves, as in the do's and don'ts of what lies ahead of them?
It's a very difficult question. Look, I'm in no position to give any advice to anyone.
That sounds very CFO type. Actually, investment banker type.
It's the truth. No, investment banking, you get paid for doing it, giving advice, but no. I think the reason I say that is my realization after, after 25 years after business school has been that, everybody has their own journey, and no journey is going to be similar to somebody else's journey. The most important thing is you have to define for yourself what's important to you, and make sure that your work and where you spend your time aligns with what your values are and what's important to you. what was important to me, which, by the way, if I reflect back, what's important to me has changed every decade. And I think Louisa would, if you reflect back 25, 30 years, I don't know what you'd say, but for me, after I graduated business school, what was most important to me was financial independence. Okay, and I wanted to achieve financial independence, and which is why I joined banking, and I worked extremely hard on all of that stuff. Today is that's not what's most, and this following decade, that was not the most important thing. Today, it's not the most important. Today, if you said what's most important to me at present, peace of mind is most important to me. Which is obviously hard to achieve given the stressful situations you're in, and you're constantly on the road, and you're trying to manage, 400 different variables all across the company and so forth. But getting back to what keeps me grounded is trying to achieve that peace of mind. And just because you have an objective doesn't mean you achieve it. An objective is something you strive for every day. And I don't know, Luisa, like if you reflect back last 3 decades, I don't know what your objective was every decade, but
Same one, to be happy. I always want to be happy. That's only. And
you actually were quite a happy person.
I'm always happy. No, but it's true. But for me, it's like if what I'm doing is something that I really like. When I wake up in the morning, I say, "Oh, I want to do it." If I am like feeling, "Oh, I have to do this again. I don't want to go to the office," or so, yeah, that was what, and I still is. And of course, try to have a better world every day. But yeah.
And the other thing I'd say is, again, what was important to me still is, I would say across the last 25 years, is learning. The reason I moved from medicine into something else was I just felt I was not learning. And even now, we were talking earlier, after Christmas, so the first week of January, I spent a week in Silicon Valley, meeting with Microsoft and AWS and Salesforce and everybody, and learning what's going on with AI and agentic AI, etc. Now, one could say, okay, that's not part of my job. It's not. But I feel for 2 reasons. A, I'm just a curious person and I love learning. And 2, I think a lot of the reason I went is, what can I learn to bring it back to make my organization better? So those, things like that have always been a motivator for me. So you have to find what motivates you. Do you get excited every morning to, teach students, and that's what excites you? Do you get excited every morning, okay, I'm going to learn something new. Is it going to be a great day? Like, what's important to you?
Thank you. Okay, I think we have some. Okay, there.
Aradhana, Luisa, thank you so much for your presentation. It was amazing. Aradhana, this is the first time that I feel so related to some expositor, because I'm also a doctor in my country. I'm from Peru. I did my specialization in management in health, and then I'm started to study my MBA program. So I felt really related with the whole history that you shared with us at the beginning of your presentation. And I would love to know from your perspective, how do you think that we can get into the administrative market, especially in the pharmaceutical industry, in a country that usually we are not born on? So in my case, I'm from South America, and I wanted to join the market even in Europe or Australia. In your case, you study your MBA program in US, and you join American companies. So we are going to finish our studies, and that path, some of us already started getting the rejections or not getting the opportunity to get into it. Sometimes it's hard for us, so some advice related to that. And my second question is related to AI. Even though you are you are not implementing that, but you are the CFO, so what are your insights from investing in AI, especially in the pharmaceutical industry? Thank you so much.
So let me just make sure I understood the question correctly. So your first question is, how do you make correct me if I'm phrasing your question incorrectly. Your first question is how do you make inroads into industry post your MBA? Is that correct? In a different market.
Yeah. Oh, sorry, in a different country.
You
The
mean
same market.
geography, right?
Yeah.
In a different geography versus where you grew up or versus where you did your MBA?
Where did you grow up and study your medical degree?
Look, and I talked earlier about how nobody wanted to give me an internship. I don't think, every time and every era is different. I think you should, obviously you're applying for opportunities, but you should take any opportunity that you think is good enough. I think if you keep waiting for a perfect opportunity, that's probably not a good strategy. I think you take a good enough opportunity as long as it offers you the opportunity to learn, the opportunity to grow, and the opportunity to contribute. And hopefully, if you do all those three, more doors will open to you. The reason I got the job at Alexion, and this new CEO called me, is because I did a good job for him when he was a client, right? In investment banking, the way you get business is through referrals. You do a good job and you get more business, whether it's promotions or other opportunities. So my only advice would be you take whatever opportunity you can get, regardless of country or geography, as long as it offers you the opportunity to do those three things. And then you do those three things well, and more doors will open for you. And you try to make the best of those opportunities. And then I think your second question was, how is AI being applied in the pharmaceutical space? So it's being actually applied, and there are way more applications than it's actually being applied today. Today, it's probably being applied more in drug discovery and not even biologic drug discovery, more chemistry and chemical entities, and trying to predict drug interactions and things like that. So more on the discovery side, but there are a lot more applications. I think where AI has the potential, and what's happening today, not just in our industry, but practically any industry, is it's taking, where AI is helping, is it's taking either shortening process, so something that used to take 3 months is now taking 3 weeks or 3 days. But it's actually either removing a pain point or shortening a process or making something efficient in a process that already exists. Okay? What it's not yet doing, which I don't think is that far away, probably within a few years, is fundamentally changing processes or fundamentally rethinking processes. And that's probably the next wave that would come. But even in this first wave of existing processes, there's plenty of opportunity.
There are several hands. Yeah.
Thank you very much. It's been extremely interesting to hear your perspective. First of all, I'm Thomas Carroll. Nice to meet you. I work for the NHS. I did a MIM here in 2019, then worked for Amazon for a couple of years, now in the NHS as a management/strategy consultant, kind of internal to the NHS. So 2 questions, if I may be so bold. First of all, in terms of working with national healthcare systems across the globe, of course, national healthcare systems, big customer, but profit pressure. They want to keep the costs down and everything. So how does AstraZeneca kind of think about national healthcare systems? And secondly, I'm sure, amazing career, and you seem like a very lovely, humble person. But if you were to be a little less humble about one of the coolest things that you've done in your career, or I think you like to brag about a little bit, what would one of those things be?
Okay. So in most of the world, with the exception of the United States, healthcare payers are generally single health, it's single payer systems, whether it's the UK or most countries. So what's most important, for a company like AstraZeneca or any company that is bringing innovation is that you're able to show the value of that innovation to the system and therefore to the patient. Now, if you say, well, we're going to create a new cancer drug, and that cancer drug is going to, extend your life by 1 month, right? I don't think anybody would argue, okay, that's a huge improvement in life, or, we should pay, $10,000 for it, right? But if you are truly extending, 1 to 5 years of productive life, I think that's real value add. And the same could be said in any innovation space, whether it's medical devices, hip replacements, knee replacement. They're basically keeping people healthier and alive longer. The biggest return on investment for healthcare systems is actually early diagnosis and early intervention. Because, again, if you catch lung cancer early, the 5-year survival prognosis is so much higher, right? Same with if you catch diabetes or kidney disease or any of these diseases earlier, you actually can have a real impact and, extend productive life. So I think and that's our view too, right? The earlier you can intervene, the better chance you have for showing true value to patients and the healthcare system. Your second question regarding what I like to brag about, not much actually. So I would say if I think of like my time at Alexion, the thing I'm really proud of is changing culture in an organization. The thing I'm really proud of is not that, there was a $40 billion deal with AstraZeneca. It's more the impact I had on the people who I've had the privilege of crossing paths with. I'm really proud that, I had 12 direct reports as a CFO so this is just my direct reports at Alexion, and 6 of them are actually public company CFOs now. So that makes me very proud. So yeah, those are the things I'm proud of.
Are you recruiting now? Maybe somebody are applying
I'm
for a
not
job?
no, in finance, I'm sure we're recruiting, but I don't have direct roles open right now.
Okay, let me get over there in the middle, maybe. Yeah. Over there, yeah. The microphone arriving. Yes, it's coming, it's coming. And over here, yes.
Hi, nice meeting you. Thank you for your very nice talk. I'm Anaid, I'm a scientist at the Francis Crick Institute. And so my question is in relation to translational research and how we fund that, really, in the academic setting. Because I've been noticing more and more partnerships with the Crick. We have one with AstraZeneca, GSK, etc. So I'm wondering, was it pharma that realized that there's a bit of a funding gap in terms of how we get innovations out of academia? And that's where these sort of partnerships started showing up. And if that's the case, if you're in a place that is not the Crick, and you're trying to get your idea ahead, how would you solve sort of that funding gap, basically, before you can actually attract AstraZeneca or whoever you want to work with?
In academia, there's always a funding gap, one could argue. But I would say it's the same in pharma. There's always a funding gap. When I do budgets for the year, the ask for R&D funding is generally 50% higher than my budget, right? So you have to cut back a lot of projects, and hopefully, and that's what investors, pay us for, is to make good decisions and hopefully fund the best possible projects or the best possible studies and so on and so forth. I think there is, and this has evolved over the last several decades, the sort of opportunity for public-private partnerships or university-pharma partnerships where universities can get some funding and pharma can perhaps achieve similar research, but at a lower cost or maybe with broader expertise around the table and so forth. But how do you get to that point? I think you have to really demonstrate that that's something that would be value add to an AstraZeneca, or something that an AstraZeneca could not do alone because it would be in one silo versus an institution could bring several expertise or several different types of knowledge centers into that type of research. That's the only advice I could, or the only suggestion I could offer.
Okay, let's go maybe over there and then on the back, because we have several hands on the back.
First of all, thank you. This is Hassan. My question is regarding R&D spend, actually. So how do you keep the researchers happy versus by funding them versus funding something that is more commercially viable? And how do you allocate the budget? And then the second part, another question is how, when it comes to M&A, how do you decide if you're going to invest more into M&A versus in-house research?
Yeah, so your fundamental question is about capital allocation and resource allocation, right? How do you make resource allocation decisions? And that's where your MBA comes very useful, because there's something called a DCF and an NPV, which is also a very good tool. No, but not all kidding aside. So that is a fundamental, and that's a very rigorous process, right? It's not like, proposals get submitted and you just pick whatever you want, or you pick the highest NPV one. We have, and every company does, and this is regardless of whether it's healthcare or software or any industry for that matter, hopefully, a whole set of criteria as to what would constitute commercially viable, what would be in the area you're already in. So for example, we don't go and invest in neuroscience because we're not in neuroscience, right? For us to go and invest in a whole new area in neuroscience would mean that we need to set up the expertise, we need to then build a sales force, et cetera, et cetera. We're already in cancer, so for us to do another study or another product in oncology is easier and simpler, and we already have the expertise to commercialize it. So there's a whole list of criteria, everything from commercial viability, competition, and you also have to look, given the timelines in pharma, which is different from software, the timelines in pharma are like 5, 6, 7 years out. So you have to anticipate what the world will look like and how diseases will be treated 6 years from now versus how they're being treated today, and therefore what will be the unmet need and how will you justify value to systems and so on and so forth. So you have to take all of those criteria into account and obviously do the math and the NPV and how much resources are being spent, and then prioritize accordingly. So every time it's a prioritization process, and it's the same with external M&A versus internal development. Because if you acquire something from the outside, the only way you make money on it, you make returns on it, is if you are able to create more value than you paid for the asset. Right? If you paid $1 billion for the asset and you were only able to create $1 billion of value, that's not a value-enhancing thing for the enterprise. So, so then the question comes, how are you going to do better than what you paid for it? Which is a whole rigorous analysis.
Thank you. And there were several hands on the back that maybe I'm not. Yeah, if you can pass somebody on the back over there, maybe. Oh, no, on the back, please, because I'm always forgetting about the ones in the back.
Hi, my name is Bernardo. I'm an alumni here. Thanks for making the time to be here today. I have two questions to your related to your pre-Astra Zeneca days, when you left banking and before joining Astra Zeneca. First question is, you highlighted that had challenges changing the culture of the company. Can you offer some lights about how did you go about it? What alliances you built to make sure you drove culture change? Second question is, at the juncture at the acquisition when you became CFO, I'm sure you already maybe seeing the writing on the wall that this could happen. I wonder if you can offer some advice on how did you position yourself politically to make sure that you got all you wanted, because it's pretty unusual, as Luisa said, right? You're on the acquired company, you became CFO of the whole thing. So I'd love to hear more. Thank you.
I'll answer the second question first because that's the easier one. So I actually didn't know that they were going to offer me to stay. Because as normally happens, the big fish acquires the small fish. All the executives and the small fish leave. That's normal. So I was expecting to leave. And actually recruiters start calling you, right? So I had 2 other offers to go leave. And I was assuming that as soon as the deal closed, I would be gone. So the fact that AstraZeneca approached me was a bit of a surprise. So that's the easy answer. The second question, the first question that you asked was, how did going about changing culture? That's a very, very important topic because it's probably one of the hardest things to do in an organization. And it becomes harder and harder. Obviously, the bigger the organization, the more established it is, the more successful it is. It is, so how do you go about doing it? I'm not sure there's a formula or an approach, but I think trying to understand the essence of what is holding the organization back from achieving its best possible potential, and really getting into the root cause of what that is. In the case of Alexion, the culture had become very risk averse. And the reason it had become very risk averse is because 2 years before I joined, they'd actually done an acquisition for like $9 billion. They'd taken $5 billion of debt, which was a massive acquisition for them. And that acquisition had completely blown up. Like the product had not worked out. Like it was bad. It was probably in the pharma space, the top 3 worst acquisitions of all times. Okay, so you have to truly understand what drives culture and why people behave the way they behave. So people had become very risk averse. Nobody wanted to take any more risk because it's like, okay, well, if something blows up, our fingers will be pointed at me, etc. You have to make it safer for people to take a risk. You have to make it safer for people to speak up. You have to make it safer for people to fail from time to time. So you have to do all those things, and you have to celebrate failures as much as you celebrate successes. Again, it depends on what you are trying to change. This was an example for Alexion, which was different. AstraZeneca is different. AstraZeneca is very entrepreneurial, highly risk-taking, etc. There you have a different problem, where it's almost getting 100,000 people organization, and especially the leadership of that organization, the top 200-300 leaders, to really think beyond their own silo, right? So I'm a leader. I run the regulatory function. But as a leader in such a huge organization, you're not just leading regulatory. Yes, that's your day job. But how do you get people like that to think that you need to drive the entire organization with you, not just in your own silo? So every organization, and this is not just every organization through every phase of its evolution and every phase of its life cycle has different challenges. You have to be able to identify what it is and get to the root cause, and how do you get people to change, and how do you get people to think broader, or so. Anyway, it's too much words, but
Very inspiring, very, very, very inspiring. Let me get that hand on the back and then here, and maybe that would be the last two questions. Yes, there is, yeah, over there. Thank you.
Hello, good evening. You've had an incredible career spanning across 3 vastly different industries. And I wonder, on the first week of those career shifts that you made, did you ever find yourself needing to get out of your own head? Perhaps you're in a room full of scientists and you're not fully versed with all the technical language, or perhaps in banking the first week there. How did you manage that? The balance between looking like you know what you're doing and also faking it till you make it sometimes.
I actually don't know. I think you always have to go into places. I don't think anybody expects you to know everything. And you just have to be willing to learn. And I have no problem, yes, people expect you to make decisions, but you also have to be willing to learn. And even today, like, people will come to me, they'll whatever have some proposal, you make a decision, and then or you make a decision, you have a point of view. But if somebody presents information or data or alternative point of view, you change your view. So I think it's just, I think it's the ability to be open to learning and to be flexible. I don't want to say fake it till you make it, but knowing that, and especially in organizations that are scientific, or any organization, you will never be the expert in the room. You may be an expert in some area, but the reason you work in places like this is because you actually have experts in all sorts of different areas. And you want to learn from them. I will never be as good as the head of regulatory in knowing about, regulatory process. I'll know enough, but you have to learn from the people who are, that's why they're there. So I think having just the learning ability and the humility to learn from everyone around you.
I think we have one more question, and then I might have another one to finish.
You should ask Luisa some questions.
I am the one that asks questions in class. So.
Okay.
Yeah, hi there. Hi, thanks for your time tonight. So I'm Carl. I'm also a biomedical researcher at the Francis Crick Institute. And so we're working on AAV gene therapies, and particularly into your work relating to Alexion. So I have this question for you from sort of like a scientist perspective. We're trying to get our technology kind of towards the market, right? And then part of that we think will entail some sort of like biopharma partnering, right? So so we're looking at that as a way of trying to kind of like accelerate our development. And so I'm curious from a CFO perspective. So I've been trying to kind of get in touch with the right folks. So I go to these conferences, everybody is senior vice president, and it's really unclear to me how the decision-making works in terms of the R&D collaborations. So that's question number 1, if you could like point on that, like how that works. And then in question number 2, as it relates to acquisitions, maybe not the multi-billion-dollar acquisitions, but so like smaller ones, things like Logic Bio, for example, the acquisition that happened with AZ. Like, how do the mechanics go down there? If you could elucidate that for me, that would be super helpful. Thank you.
So how does decision making work? Again, depends on the organization. It's actually quite complex from the outside. From the inside to us, it seems easier, but it can be very complex. The opportunity for a collaboration or any idea has to be brought forth by whoever's going to own it at the end of the day, right? So they want to do a collaboration with gene therapy, fine. The person who ultimately within our R&D group is going to own it needs to be the champion for it, because they may do a collaboration with you or whoever, and they're the ones who need to deliver, because I'm going to hold them accountable, right? I'm going to say, okay, well, you spend 5 million on this, show me the results. So they need to be the champion to bring those ideas and be willing to commit what they're going to deliver based on, whatever collaboration, acquisition, et cetera, et cetera. That's how the decision making works. And then we determine, okay, well, is this idea worth funding? And I can give you my views on gene therapy and the commercial viability of that if you're interested. But that's how decision making works. And the same is on M&A or BD or anything like that. So either a commercial leader or R&D leader, whoever needs to champion it and own it.
Okay, I have actually two questions. The first one is you have been working in a male-dominated industry for 2 decades, at least in investment banking is male-dominated. I don't know about healthcare. Have you ever feel any problem? Have you feel any disadvantage for being a woman? And have you also seen any changes in the last years? Tell us a little bit about that, because we have been talking a lot about healthcare, but this is also women in business clubs. So how was your experience as being a woman in a male-dominated industry?
Yeah, so you're right. I mean, from your McKinsey days, I'm sure. Investment banking was very bad, very notorious for being, I'd say less than 1% women, VP and above. I think at senior levels was less than 1% at the time, probably still is. And it was always challenging for many reasons. One is obviously professional reasons, but also in places like investment banking or consulting, where it's a client service business, right? You are in service of the client. Client relationships, client entertainment, all of that carries a lot of weight, which I was never very good at. But I don't golf, I don't drink, I'm vegetarian, so I'm a very poor sort of client entertainment type of person. So that was another disadvantage. But you play to your strengths, and not every client will like you. And clients used to come. I used to be in New York when I was in banking. Clients would say, okay, well, we're coming to New York. We'd like to go to, steakhouse. I'm like, okay, we'll take you to steakhouse. And, I would have spinach and they would have steak, and that's cool with me. So you just have to, you have to, again, stay true to yourself and manage the best. And obviously in the last several years, a lot has changed. When I was in banking, you would invariably get staffed on Friday nights, which means you would get another big project on your desk, so which means you'd be working, 90 hours a week. Actually, sometimes I joke that my life has not really improved as a first-year associate versus now I still work 80, 90 hours a week. But, but things have improved a lot in some spaces, and hopefully it'll keep improving.
Okay, last question. Amazing career, and we are all fascinated for all the things you're doing. What's next? What's in the bucket list?
I don't know. I sometimes feel like I have 3 more careers ahead of me, careers or things I want to do. One of them definitely is something to do with teaching at some point. One of them will hopefully be something to do in the arts. And then one of them, I don't know, but hopefully I'll keep learning and doing something good with my life.
Wow, amazing. We have been hearing a lot about learning, about growth, and about peace of mind. So we wish you that the peace of mind is there, especially tonight. And for sure, you can keep learning and growing, that there is no doubt. Thank you so much for being here. Big applause for her.
Perfect. And a few words before we wrap up. So for those who don't know me, my name is Aishwarya. I'm one of the co-presidents of the Healthcare Club. And I just want to say thank you so much to our speaker for tonight. Personally, I was super inspired to hear more about you, especially as a South Asian woman and someone in such an incredible position of power in healthcare. So thank you for sharing your journey with us. I really enjoyed hearing about the decisions you took and the steps you made right from your childhood to practicing medicine, to going to business school, and then working in banking, and finally, pharma, of course. So thank you so much, Aradhana, for your honesty and your transparency. And of course, thank you so much, Professor Luisa, for putting us in touch with Aradhana and making this event happen, and for making it come to life tonight as a moderator. And thanks also to our organizing team. The Healthcare Club had a lot of fun organizing this with the Women in Business Club. It was our first collab of the year, and hopefully we've got a lot more to come. And like every LBS event, thanks also to our AV team, our catering team, and the porters. And finally, thank you to all of you for joining us here tonight. I hope you've enjoyed the event so far. We're going to head to the dining room next, so please do join us to get some food, drinks, and to continue the conversation. Thank you.